Hey, welcome back to the Must Make podcast. This is Jack Workforce. Sorry to everybody who's been waiting for the new episode. I know it's been over a year, isn't it? So apologies to you. I've had loads of messages. As some of you may have seen, I've just released an album called Set and Setting. You can go check that now. It's out now. And thank you to everyone who's supported it so far. It took all my focus, as any good creative process should. I'm back. And for the rest of this year, there's going to be a lot more episodes. I've got people lined up. We just haven't been able to get the diaries and have enough sort of lead time to get them recorded. But I've got people lined up, exciting guests lined up. We're going to have that popping again this year. If you're new to the podcast, we're going to talk about creative process. We're going to ditch all of the technical stuff. We're not going to talk about plugins. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're going to talk about the hardships, the toils, the struggles of being a creative. And you can go back and listen to the previous episodes. I've had D-Bridge, Alex Perez, LSB, DRS, Sinistar, Tim Reaper, Kazra, and we did a questions episode that I may do another one thereof. Today's episode is a bit of a special one because I managed to get hold of a recording of a conversation that I had with Dave Jenkins, who's a journalist for UKF, DJ Mag, Resident Advisor, among others, and he's one of the last sort of really, really good and understanding journalists who has time and energy to put into those real deep and meaningful conversations where I feel like so much journalism is kind of lacking nowadays. And he sent me the recording that I had with him, which was about my album. So it's a bit of a shameless plug, really, but I just listened to it and I thought it was really had some gold in it and thought it'd make a cool podcast episode. So we get into quite deep topics, about my album process, but also more broadly about what's going on in music at the minute. And I think it's a really rich and meaningful, hopefully, conversation. And it's kind of a nice welcome back to the podcast. So yeah, enjoy the episode. Thanks for sticking around, or welcome back, or welcome if you're new to the podcast. Enjoy.
You said something that was really profound last time we spoke on the phone, and I think you said it as well on your podcast. And this is like basically for you, creativity is problem solving, which I wrote it down in massive block capitals on my pad at the time because I just thought, go on, that's not how I would describe creativity in any way at all. And that's, whether it's animation or whether it's music, creativity is problem solving for you. That's super interesting.
But I don't think it's just me either. I think creativity is problem solving for everybody. It's no matter how you look at it. I think there was a crosstalk I watched the other day, that DB masterclass. He says it in that he was actually a lot more eloquent with it than I am in my thinking. But ultimately, you're thinking about the next goal or how to achieve a sound or how to get inside the essence of the idea you're trying to convey. And all of that is problem solving. I know you're trying to find the quickest route from A to B. And that's like when people say, oh, have you done your 10,000 hours, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, when you've done your 10,000 hours, it means you're getting from A to B quicker and still achieving incredible results. And you're sort of like, and it's learning, isn't it? Creativity is learning. It's learning through process.
Right. Okay. So because I related to like my creativity. So I want to tell a story. I want to get a message across. How do I do that? I guess that is problem solving. I just don't see it as it's not a problem.
You literally just said it. You just said, I've got a story. How do I get it across? There's your problem. It's like, it's the classic, dynamic of getting from A to B and how do I do it in the best way possible? Having a vision and trying to work out the best way to convey it, I feel like sometimes the path of least resistance doesn't necessarily lead to the best results because it's like you're just doing the thing that feels easy, where sometimes you should move towards the thing that feels more difficult.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's been like a mantra of mine recently anyway, is to, if something feels scary, for my own well-being, I often find that I hate myself when I move away from scary things rather than moving towards them. So if something intimidates me, once you get over the initial sort of fuck, that's scary, you can sort of move towards it and rationalize it a bit more. And when you do that, you ultimately feel better about yourself, because you're like, well, yeah, instead of doing what I used to do, which would be to move away from the scary thing, you move towards it, and you actually realize, it makes it smaller, and you realize it's actually you're better for it.
Yeah, totally. So what was the scariest thing then about this album?
Well, the scariest thing really was just how much everything changed when I decided to write it, because obviously when I started the Late Night Soundtrack project, this was still when Spectrosol was going, but I was still sort of working on my own. I had this idea from the get-go to do the Late Night Soundtrack thing as an album. But I was advised by most people, and very sensibly, that because it was a new project, it was probably not the best way to go about it. So it never got the same consideration that this project did in terms of how it all fits together as an album. It was more just like a theme across 3 EPs, and I stretched that out across like a year. So it didn't get the same consideration here. But what happened when I came to approaching this, I don't know whether before COVID happened I thought I was going to do this or not. But what was scary was the fact that the rug got pulled out from everybody. So no one knew like what the future was going to look like in terms of how people were going to experience music. Like, were we going to get clubs back? Were we going to get, venues back? Or was that over? Like, that's how scary it felt at certain times. So I guess that was worrying, but weirdly, with that sort of change in circumstance, and also, the change in which your music sort of heard or tested, like you're not able to go out and test stuff on people. That stuff was all scary, but it also sort of gave a rigidity to the sort of daily routine, like after the fear had died down. So basically from March to July 2020, I took all my studio gear home. I'd literally just moved into this new room, right? I took all my gear home and had it all set up on the coffee table. And then when it came around to July and we were a bit more used to it, and it was summertime, and it was like, maybe I could, I basically bought a car because I live 10 miles away from the studio. And then between that July and like the middle of last year, I was every single work day of the week, I was just in here. It was a proper routine, in and out, writing, focusing. And I think it just sort of it gave me the opportunity to think about the stuff that I wanted to think about with the Late Night Soundtrack, but actually give the music as a whole that consideration as an album rather than just themes amongst a group of tracks.
Hey, cool. Because I was going to ask, would you consider this the Workforce debut? Because, the Late Night Soundtrack was always meant as an album. And when we spoke about, we did the very first Workforce interview, didn't we? And that was going to be an album at the time. But this is almost like, this is your second chance to do a debut album, really, in a way. Like you do get a second chance because you've been through that kind of debut album headfuck before with Dave. And now you're doing it on your own. This is a second chance to do that kind of real conceptual body of work as a body of work, and really think about it as a whole project. This is quite a rare moment, isn't it, in that way?
Yeah.
Unique.
And that's scary. So to speak to your last question, that was scary. So with the Late Night Soundtrack, I don't consider it an album. I consider it what you would call an LP, in the sense of because I didn't approach it in the way of an album, if that makes sense. There's threads that run through all the music, but I think that could be the same with even EPs I've done for Exit or 1985. There's themes, right? And I never had all the music together and then went, those are going to be the 12, and they fit together as a 12. I always was just like group of 4, group of 4, group of 4, right? Whereas with this, it was very much like, right, there's 8 tunes there, and they have a theme, or they have some unifying features about them. What sort of styles haven't I got that I want to represent on this record? And how do I tie these really broad styles together somehow? Because they're quite different. Like, there's certain tracks that you may listen to and think that doesn't sound anything like this track on the same record. So how do I tie that all together? So yeah, this one very much felt like it had all the difficulties that we had writing Spectrosol albums, in terms of like really overthinking, really being over analytical. There were weeks where I would just come in here Monday to Friday and just listen to all the music, and it was probably torturous, like really torturous. But now that at the time I was thinking, why am I doing this to myself? Like, why am I just like critiquing it and doubting and getting in my own way? And all those things that I chat about on my podcast in terms of process, in terms of what people do to get to sort of stop themselves finishing, like tweaking little things that no one's going to ever listen to or notice, and a lot of it is just, it's part of the process, and it does serve a purpose, but only to a certain point. So that's, for me, how I can give it the official sign off of an album, is that it's been really considered as a whole thing, as opposed to Late Night Soundtrack, which I felt was just like a collection of singles, or like, there's like threads, but with this album, there's a lot more consideration about how it all comes together.
Yeah, definitely. And you can really feel that as well. You can really feel that. I mean, to go into the kind of set and setting title, really, because I think that is where it all comes together in a sense. And this is all about context and the time that you've been through personally, the room that you're sitting in talking to me now, your headspace, but also the people who are part of your life. And during the last 2 years, the small amount of people, it makes you realize how small your circles actually really are. We go around and we've got lots of friends that we see on the weekends when we're out working, but generally when we were all taken away from that circuit, you're only with like 2, 3, 4 people, like, very close members of your family. Some people were completely on their own for long periods of time. And I think that's what set and setting is about there, really, in a way, isn't it? Like all of these things, context.
Yeah. It was a funny one, because I am like a sort of, I'm not antisocial, but I'm comfortable if I'm just at home, If I can make sense of what the social gathering is going to be like, I'm happy in it. But a lot of the time I feel more comfortable just me and my missus, or me and one friend, or me and 2 friends or something. And I guess that was actually part of the problem with this process, was that there was no feedback loop, in the sense I was very much on my own. I felt very much on my own for a lot of it. And I had to like lean on contemporaries of mine or peers of mine. And, so I sent like a few close people to me the record as it was progressing, and sort of getting feedback and ideas and all that sort of thing. But then I sort of realized that no one cares as much as me about how it all comes together. So I have to ultimately rely on myself. With the set and setting thing, it's like I said, I've just spent like the last 2 weeks really agonizing over like writing sort of 500-600 words about what this concept's about. And it's essentially like, I've been really interested for like years in quantum physics, but that sort of led me to this idea of biology filling the gap with quantum physics, where like all these things we can't make sense of, if you start to consider human biology within it, it starts to make some sense. And the idea is that there's no like objective reality. Everybody has a different a reality, because it's like a reanimation of what you see, what you hear, what you smell, touch, whatever. Like all of that just shapes a subjective reality between your ears, right? And I guess I was really interested in where music sort of fits within that context, and how it sort of shapes people's experiences, and then how those experiences shape people's sense of reality and what they bring to it in terms of their mindset and their sort of where they are. And also within the context of lockdown, like, do we have to consider this new unknown setting that this music's going to be consumed in the future? Are we going to be hearing stuff loud on big sound systems now? Or do I have to really consider that this is going to be listened to just on a hi-fi at home or on headphones or something, So all of those things, like mainly the way it was going to be received and listened to, but as well as being open to the idea that my mindset and my setting and my reality is going to shape all of this music, and how those two things sort of, those aspects interact with each other, I was aware when I was writing all of this and all that sort of shit that I'm potentially like post-rationalizing it, but actually so much of what I was thinking about was really powerful in what I was writing here, in the sense that I would be listening to a podcast or two on from work in the car or like on long drives, whatever. And I'd be, I'd get in some days after work. I'd walk in and I would have just turned off a podcast and I'd be like, fuck, that's like really interesting. And I might like, there's loads of samples from podcasts and talks I was listening to in the record. But it became aware. I became sort of aware after I'd finished it. And fortunately, because I finished it like almost middle of last year, I had quite a lot of time to reflect back and think about it. And I realised how much of that sort of theoretical stuff that I was sort of messing around with thinking about impacted what I was doing here. And obviously...
Hugely. I'm going to stop you there for a second because there's so much information to take in and absorb there. And it all makes complete sense. Right down to the point of, so you've got these vocal samples running throughout the album. And the first voice that you hear, as I'd identified when you sent it to me on email, was Photek. And he's saying, jungle is everything that we listen to outside the jungle, effectively, in summary. And that was, I've been looking for that quote forever because it almost felt like an urban myth that he'd ever said it. And loads of people have paraphrased it in interviews before, people like Goldie or people like Darren, and I'd never actually found the original source. And it gave me so many goosebumps to hear that. But with you, what you're listening to outside of jungle, outside of drum and bass, outside of your day-to-day work, are these podcasts, are these huge courses of science, like which question reality, which question perception, which completely flip things, even in those little samples that you've got on the album, which are really well placed. If you stop and listen to them, they blow your mind. Like if that's not if that's not the discourse that your head is inside normally, if you're an academic or if you listen to a lot of these podcasts, then that's, you're quite used to these type of mind-blowing twists of perception. But this is your reflection. So, instead of sampling old Motown records, which is essentially what Photek was on about, sampling jazz records, sampling what you're listening to outside, this is you sampling your own thoughts in a way and reflecting your own questioning reality at points, really, aren't you?
Yeah, Dave, thank you. You get it. Thank you. That's exactly it in a nutshell. And I'm going to nick what you just said and put it into my little spiel that I've written here because
that'll be 50
that's exactly what it is. I mean, aside from the fact that I feel a real affinity with Photek, not just because I love his music, but where you hear him talk about using drums as an instrument, that's just me, like through and through. Like the strongest part of my production is not like how it sounds or the mix or like even the songs. For me, it always has to be the drums. I'm from like a percussion background. Like my dad's been a drum player since I was a kid. So I was brought up in like Afro-Cuban music, like Latin music, so jazz. So for me, it's always been about drums. And obviously, when you're in the album process, you're trying to keep inspired. So you're watching lots of stuff, like I'm listening to podcasts, I'm watching docs about, that one's from, I think, like Talking Heads or something, Metalheads. Watching stuff to kind of create a richness of ideas so that what comes out feels familiar to drum and bass people, but also brings some new flavor to it. That sample was just like, it just says everything that I love. Well, I'm not like appropriating what he said, but I just think that it's really important that people realize that drum and bass shouldn't be inward looking. It should be outward looking and then bringing more in to keep it rich. Otherwise it dies. And it feels like things are outside of, it feels quite homogenized, I feel. And I feel like lots of people are looking at what other drum and bass people are doing rather than what is going on more broadly with the idea of
media, I think, because I'm not too sure, because it's not so new as well. So, I'd say up to your generation, you didn't come in to drum and bass through listening to drum and bass, hip hop fan and stuff like that. Most people I know came into it either through rock or hip hop, those two kind of polar ends, really. But the next generation, the people who are in their 20s now, they've grown up with this. They heard DJ Fresh at number one when they were in high school, and drum and bass has been their rock or hip hop. So they inspired by it all of the time, and
that's a really good point.
A little bit older, so we had to come from other musics because this, wasn't it. I mean, it was around when I was a teenager, and you're a tiny bit younger than me. Like, I got Timeless when I think I was 14, but none of it made sense for me until I was about 18, 19, and I had to go through lots of other musical paths. And I know everybody else our age, our generation, slightly younger, did, but the other generation who've come after came into drum and bass, so that's their reference points in that way, really.
That's a really good point, actually. I was just listening to, on the way in, the Broken Record podcast, the Rick Rubin one, and he was talking to Flying Lotus, and they were talking about hip hop, and he was saying, when I got into hip hop, there was no mainstream hip hop. It was all underground hip hop. So the idea that there was like this relationship between the mainstream and the underground just didn't exist then, because hip hop was all underground. And I would say, and it got me thinking, I was like, fucking hell, when I got into it, there was no Pendulum, there was no DJ Fresh, there was no chart drum and bass at all. It was all underground. But then maybe I feel like, when you mentioned Timeless, that's an example of where it broke through to the mainstream, but it wasn't a homogenized sound. It was very true to what drum and bass is about, I think. And now we've got to this point where the stuff that breaks through isn't really the heart and soul of what drum and bass is about. It's more homogenized. And obviously you've got that sort of tension between mainstream and underground all the time. I mean, but that, again, I guess we weren't constrained by that. Well, no, I wasn't there, but people that were making music in the 90s weren't thinking, oh, if I do this like this, I'll get to there. Even the stuff like the mainstream stuff. You remember like, what was it? Everything But the Girl did some drum and bassy type things, or Bjork, or back then they were still quite credible records. They weren't like,
Yeah. And Bowie as well, like the Little Wonder tune and stuff like that. It was pure experimentalism, really. I think that was the beauty and the recklessness of the 90s, which we can't really kind of recapture again. But it's really important, and it's my advice to anybody who ever asks me for any type of advice, or people I mentor, is listen to other shit, listen to other stuff. Go and see a fucking punk band. Go and listen to loads of UK garage. Like, listen to everything you can outside, because that's where you'll get your ideas from. There's no point in the next foghorn or whatever.
Yeah, because you're trying to shape your voice. So to shape your voice, you shouldn't be like doing impressions of other people, like it feels like, it feels like, you should be able to do a good impression of, say, like a jazz idea over here or a rock idea, but then it's that ethic of mashing them together. And I feel like that's one of the main things I've thought of with the Workforce Project, really, and with the podcast idea, is to shine a light on sort of the artistry that can be achieved within a music that people bastardize and think is really disposable. Like, I think there still are pockets of real artistic richness in drum and bass, right? But there's also a lot of disposable stuff that is here today and big, and people are like, whoa, that thing, and you won't remember it in like not even that long. There's so much of it, and so much of it just falls by the wayside. So that was a big consideration for me also, is like trying to not put anything on a record that's not got a purpose for being there, or that it has to have a special place for me, regardless of what it sounds like, but also be trying to do something, trying to achieve something, even if it's not the one that resonates with the most people. Like, those are my favorites, the ones, there's a couple on the record where they were there or thereabouts when I was doing the late night soundtrack, but I was just like, they just don't fit on that project. I love them, but they don't fit on that project. So I'm going to hold on to it and put it towards what I think is an album.
Cool, because I was going to ask about that, because there were, this isn't the only lockdown thing you did. You've been incredibly prolific during all of this time. As there was the Mood EP, and there was the other one as well, Care and Consideration as well. So I don't know if they were kind of projects that were kind of already in the making before all of this happened, but you were super busy anyway. So I didn't know whether there was a certain point at lockdown where you thought, right, it's album time, or whether those EPs were done and this was the collection that was building up anyway in parallel, if you like.
I think I remember at the tail end of 2020 there was a bit of tension, because the music that I'd signed with Kazra was finished, but I just had to get the pre-masters out and send them off to be mastered, right? And I think that was in like tail end of 2020. And around the same time, I was in the writing process of the stuff for 1985. But I was just writing a lot at that point. Like, so the stuff that I gave to Alex was probably being written around the same time that the album was being written. Apart from, so the Don't Tell Part 2 was written in my old studio. So that would have been in 2019. I think I wrote that like end of 2019. And then the Javon one I actually wrote at my coffee table during lockdown 1. So between March and July. And then the last 2 I made when I got, so was the Apply the Brakes one was also made there. And then I made the last tune Reasons when I got back here. And that was one that I was like, I'm not sure if I want to let this one go to Alex. I might want this one for the album. But then in the end, it was like, yeah, okay, sure. So it was all sort of overlapping. That it's very rare that you get to the end of one project and then go, I'm starting another one. There's lots of overlap. And that's a good way. I feel like it's a good way to work because there's never a dull, you're never stopping.
Yeah. Well, if you're not feeding one particular project, there's something else to jump into. There's another plate to spin. Yeah, and I think that's an honest reflection of a creative life as well. Like no project ever pays enough for you to focus on that fully and nothing else. You need to be doing shitloads of stuff. 1, to stay at that momentum anyway, and 2, to make a living.
But it also doesn't. It also breeds a sort of lack of inspiration. You have to have things going on to keep things moving. Otherwise you end up down the rabbit hole in one project. It's where this animation stuff's been really nice was tail end of 2020. Yeah, 2020. These last 2 years are literally just like, tail end of 2020. I spent loads of time working on the animations for the 1985 EP that I did and for the Critical EP. And I wanted to get them all out the way because I knew I had this album project that was sort of percolating. It was sort of there. And then basically between sort of October, November and March, April of last year, I really buckled down and got the album finished. But then, like I said to you, then once it was all bounced out and I was like, I think those are the 12 tunes that I want to have. I spent like weeks just fucking ripping it apart, absolutely ripping it apart. I spent quite a lot of time actually once all the music was finished thinking about how I can tie them all together. And that I did quite a lot with sort of atmospheric sounds. So there's like a thread of atmospheric sounds that run through the whole record. There's also some instrumentation that I used towards the back end of the record where I had my mate Lee, who's in the studio here. He's a saxophone player, and I got him playing over, some of the harder tracks towards the end, but also like the big sort of dubby outro because he's a dub. He's got a dub section. I've got some cool video of them recording it. Actually, it's cool.
Is that Leroy Horns? Is it?
Yeah. So he's a Brighton. It's kind of like a Brighton dub sax legend. And he just happens to have a studio with his partner here. And through lockdown, I didn't see many people, and I was just sort of like crossing paths with these lot every other day. And it would be like, Lee, do you fancy doing, like, there was just a point where I was like, do you fancy, because I had some of the harder tunes on the record, right? I was like, these kind of work, right, as drum and bass tunes. But they don't speak to me because they're just, they sort of fit in a box in terms of a sound.
Yeah. They'd kick off in a club. They'd be quite functional bangers or rollers, but they do. And I was going to ask about the horns and stuff because you've managed to create this arc with and that outro is really important, I think, because you start off, there's gentle, soulful moments, but towards the end, it's, if you're following it chronologically or thinking about kind of what mindset you might have been in, and because of the spoken word samples and because of the whole like set and setting concept of it, it almost feels like, these are the moments where you're losing your grip on what we all deem to be reality in a way, where things have got quite intense, but the horns really add that kind of human intensity. And that last track certainly is a really like there's a sense of finality there, because you come back round to a place that people know you more for, and it doesn't finish on a really heavy one. Like I think it's Attention to Suffering, especially, I think, and If You Feel are heavy, hard. That's you at your iciest in a way, but the horns maintain that soul, if you like, I think.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I never go into a session like when I'm writing, I don't go in with an intention of a style of tune I want to write. I feel like if I ever find myself doing that, it's a recipe for disaster, or like not achieving what you want. So
not being yourself, I guess, because you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole type of thing.
Well, yeah, I just think ultimately I always will be a big believer in process, and it's about the relationship you generate with the music while you're making it that helps determine the outcome, and it helps you determine the process. Like there's tunes of mine that I've made that I don't think many people, like that are not the ones that people know of, that I love because I remember how they came together. I remember that feeling of what happened when it came together. And I remember like not going back and changing the mix, nothing, just leaving it as like almost like a time capsule of what happened in that session, and not changing the mix, nothing, just like that's done, right? There were a few of those on this record, but in terms of the horns and in terms of those tunes specifically, like If You Feel and Attention to Suffering, they were very specifically on that day, for whatever reason, I was writing harder music, right? But like I said, it's like on their own, I was kind of like, yeah, they work, but I want something to bring them back, to give them a human or a sort of hopeful or different tone. Like this is the other thing. How many drum and bass records do you hear that have got like mad psychedelic saxophone on them? We haven't heard that kind of shit for years, and I just thought,
oh, I think there's stuff like with A-Sides and Nathan Haynes, I think maybe is the first thing that comes to mind, and the only real thing that stands out in my head there, really. Yeah. Or on the mainstream side, Bensley, who plays the saxophone in a very, very kind of a different mainstream commercial way, but is also unique. But there aren't many examples of that at all, really. I think Caliber's probably played with those textures.
But I think also with stuff like that, it's the same with when you get original vocals. I feel like a lot of drum and bass stuff, where particularly where you've used samples or it's in a particular style, if you want to take ownership of it, you have to bring this like human element in. So like original vocals obviously are a number one. They're just like, it makes it your song. So for example, Death Dreams, for example, that was the last vocal I recorded. That's my girlfriend on there singing.
Oh, cool.
And it's Maddie Lane. So she did like Future with Breakage, and I actually met her through music, very random. That had a vocal on it before she came in. And it's quite difficult to let go. It's like demo-itis, you get attached to a vocal. But then it felt, once she did that and we lived with it for a bit, I was like, right, now that feels like it's finished and it's mine. And it was the same with the horns. It was like Attention to Suffering. If you take the horns out, it's kind of just like a sort of straight, techie stepper type thing, right? And I was kind of happy with it, but I didn't feel like I owned it, because it's not necessarily my sound for that record. But then as soon as I got Lee in on it, I was like, right, Lee, you've got to do like all these records now. So he's done Observer, Attention to Suffering, So Long, and obviously his big sort of participation was on the last one, Reintegration. So, and it was about keeping a sort of human, hopeful touch to the tunes that even feel a bit bleak and dark at the end,
Yeah. And that brings together the body of work as well. It adds that another layer of consistency, doesn't it?
It was the hardest part of doing the record. Aside from the fact it was definitely the hardest musical project I've ever done, most difficult challenge ever. Bringing that aspect of it was the hardest bit, was about having a thread that runs through from start to end that you can tell, or you can see how they fit together, sort of thing. Even in isolation they work, but also together they work as a collection. That was something actually like I didn't. You can also see there's a timeline here as well, Dave, right? So when we called Spectrasoul in October 2020, and we were like, right, that's that. I think that was the spurring point for me to get stuck into this album, because before I was sort of half in, like we we were still trying to make Spectral work, even though I was doing the workforce thing.
I have to say, I'd forgotten about that announcement. It was relatively recently. It was during lockdown. It was during, I wonder in the shittest type of lockdowns. Yeah, it was. We'd gone into lockdown too when you did it. It wasn't cool. Yeah.
And at that point during lockdown where there was no gigs, I was like, you know what? This is the time. I've done well this year in terms of like connecting this project with the public and making people aware of what's going on, blah, blah. And it meant where I was like half in, where I said like moving towards the thing that's scary. The thing that was scary was to not have any potential gigs from Spectral Soul that would subsidize my ability to do workforce music and to go fully like, fuck it. The world's fucked. Nothing's going on. Let's have a crack at this. And then when we come back and just roll the dice and hope that there's something there for me when we get back. But that was the beginning of really being like backing myself and being like, right, let's do it. And I guess actually on reflection, that was the timeline matches up quite well actually, because those months after the sort of 4 or 5 months, it was me bringing together all the ideas that I had, plus writing the final tunes and bringing the whole thing together. So it was that I hadn't thought about that, but that was probably a sort of kick up the arse to get over the line.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing, I know this has been the hardest thing that you've done, but because of not being on the road, I speak to so many people who, their album process is broken up from touring, the necessity of touring, that it's taken them so long. I mean, I remember some interviews years ago, it's more in the house and techno world, where people have scrapped entire albums because it's taken so long that by the time they finished it, some of it is already dated, and they've gone, no, this isn't right. And it's because of gigs getting in the way, taking them out of that consistency and that continuity of studio time and album craft. So did that make it, not to devalue how hard this was, but did the fact that you didn't have to think about gigs make it easier in that type of way? That it gave you the focus in that sense?
I think there's two threads to this. So the first one is that music was never going to get dated because everything stopped. So first of all, there was like a stopgap where everyone could go, right, this is what my next thing's going to be. If no one hears it because no one's at clubs, it doesn't matter because it's not going to be dated. So first of all, there's that. So there's time to reflect and to think about what you want to do. And I would say to the second part of your question about like gigs impacting, I would say yes and no, in the sense that yes, in the sense that you're not knackered on a Monday, Tuesday after gigging at the weekend, and you've not taken Friday out of your schedule. So you've got like a clear, for me, it felt like I said to you, like a clear routine of get up Monday, every day of the week you're in there, you're fucking working hard, you're trying to get shit done, and you can rest at the weekend and then come back and do it again, right? So there was that aspect of it that made it easier to do it. But
a rarity, a bit of a joy as well to actually have that. You haven't had that for like 15 years, your whole adult career, pretty much. Like
exactly,
to have those weekends to yourself. Yeah.
So there's that side of it where it's like, yes, you can do your 5 days work and then 2 days rest and then go back. But in another sense, because you don't have that capability to go out and get feedback of like how something is going to work in terms of in the world, and whether people are going to like it, it makes it so much more of a mental battle in the sense of, is this good, right? And the only response you can get is from your peers, and they're never going to be as brutally honest or as invested as you. So ultimately, they're going to be like, it's cool. Or like, yeah, I really like that. And you're like, well, how like it, by what measure? Like, does you really liking it mean it's going to really work in the real world, or is it going to work in the
polite or
exactly.
Yeah.
So it added that whole component of confidence and self-belief in what you were doing.
What's the most helpful though? Because you were part of a collective of artists, and the people I most associate you with are some of the most critical and deepest thinkers, I think, in our kind of scene. Guys like Darren and people like that, Alex, and Kazra as well. You know, I mean, I don't know who you sent it to, but you tend to roll with people who have very high standards, who put out incredible music. So I'm imagining that, you know, and you know them long enough and work with them, that these peers didn't pull punches as well. So I don't think anyone would have been just polite for the sake of just, oh, nice tune, mate. Everyone would have come back with something.
It depends when you catch someone, and you don't want to be too like pushy. It's tough, and I feel like I maybe pissed some people off during the process. Don't know whether I did. Never know. I got like during lockdown, like not only did I get like low mood and anxiety, I got this mad like paranoia because I was just in here on my own all the time, and I wasn't sure, like, particularly when you're writing, you think people are like judging or thinking, and you become it's a self-centeredness really. It's like ego getting out of control, thinking that people care about what you're doing like more. They don't. So
that's all part of the perception and the reality in your own reality, isn't it?
Exactly. You're creating the reality between your ears. Like, on the one hand, I'm thinking, well, no one cares about this project as much as I do, so why am I going to ask them like for honest feedback? And on the other hand, I'm thinking, God, does everyone think I'm really annoying, or like I'm nagging, or blah blah blah? But actually, I'm aware that comes with being an artist, I guess, is that self-doubt and that self-criticism. But I'm just quite an open book, and I'm quite happy to sort of reach out to people quickly on WhatsApp or email or call them or whatever, where some people are more just like, I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for confidence and sort of ideas and criticism from people immediately, where other people would be like, I'm going to live with this for a bit, and they're more comfortable with what they think about it. I'm like, I think this is good. Can you validate that almost, you know? So certain people who are really helpful throughout the project, like Darren, Alex, Halogenics, LSB, who else am I missing? Dub Physics, you know. And I wasn't saying, I didn't send them like the full album at the end and go, what do you think of this? It was like, you know, tunes at a time. With being insular and being in here, you know, I've got WhatsApp on my computer, we're working on a tune and then chatting with someone at the same time. Breakage, another person, you know, just like collection of people who all have a similar idea about what they're doing, and we all share ideas, we all share knowledge. You know, we're constantly if someone will come into this group that I'm in and they'll be like, does anyone know how to do XYZ, or does anyone know a contact for, you know, blah blah blah, and we're just like constantly sharing and helping each other. So that network was so super important over lockdown, because like my partner couldn't understand what she understood to a degree the impact that lockdown had on us and our profession, but only other artists could understand fully what was going on, you know. And the same with writing an album, like and finishing a project. Only those people can really understand what's going on. So even like my bestest, oldest friends, if they're not in music or they're not doing what I'm doing, they don't have the perfect grasp on the struggle that's being sort of dealt with at that time.
Yeah,
you know,
because it's all up in here, and I'm the same with my, you know, I'm not an artist in that sense, but it's a creative living, and it's self-employed, and there's a lot of these paranoias. I can relate to so many things that you're saying there, but when I'm speaking to my friends, none of them, my day-to-day mates, like my very close circle, none of them are in this field, and I gave up on trying to explain some of the stuff because it's all just in my head anyway. And then value then the fact that you don't have to talk about that or think about that, and it's another level of friendship then. Yeah, you're just completely away from it. And there might be points where you do, if you're having a late night and you're chatting away, and then you do kind of spill it all out, but it never makes sense when you're talking to somebody who's completely alien to this world. Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? And only artists or people in that kind of creative world. It's interesting. So like your missus is a singer then, so at least she kind of understood, you know, a lot of what you were going through then. Because my missus is like a very, very practical person. She worked in the corporate world for many years and stuff, and is a problem solver in a very different way. Mm. And a lot of stuff I'd spill out, and she'd just look and just be like, that's not even a problem. That's not even an issue. That's just you being weird, mate.
It's amazing how much perspective you can get from someone like that who sees you every day and knows you really well, and can sort of cut through all the shit with simple sort of, you know, just sort of take the thing that you're wrestling with and give you some perspective on it that shows that it's like, well, actually it's not that big a problem, grand scheme. On the one hand, she'd be like, well, you're only a musician. Like, you're flexible. But on the other, you can see if I'm really struggling with something, she just can get to the heart of it, like, straight away, cut through. And like, she deserves like so much credit for a lot of the ideas on the record really were her. Like, the record that I did with Shady, I sent that to a few people, and they were like, oh, the vocal's really good, but just not on that tune. And I was like, but that almost makes me want to do it more, it's an uneasy fit. And I remember, like, I played it to her and she was like, nah, that's wicked. Like, it's uneasy, but that's good, because you want moments of uneasiness on the record, and Darren the same with that one. He was like, yeah, stick that, leave it there. Just sort of like, she could, she's not a drum and bass head, but she can hear passion from me and help reflect it back to keep things going, simplify things down. Like, I'll come home if I've had a good day, and she's good at absorbing that energy and sort of helping bolster it, sort of thing. And obviously she had to be on the record. It was a no-brainer, really. Like, and she's a teacher, so we recorded it in last Easter holidays. And that was like the last bit of recording for the record. And then I sort of like toiled over it for ages. But yeah, it was funny. It kind of focused it. Like, I feel like this is the first one where I've really had to lean on someone, like a partner. I've had partners before when I've written records. In fact, the first two Spectral records, first two Spectral records, I had set a previous partner, but with this one, it was more, we were almost, it was kind of like really close on it. Not that she was listening to all the music, but more just like as a sort of emotional crutch. Sounds awful, but like,
no, you need that. And prior to that, with Spectral Soul Records, that would have been Dave and you would have been each other's crutch to that degree. So you wouldn't have had to have spilt as much out to your partner and your family and stuff. But with this, the whole idea and the whole isolation and the whole context was really interesting. I mean, literally, I just published a piece with Wilkinson, who, he's just delivered his best piece of work ever, his album. And that was all, very much related. There's lots of parallels with what you're saying and what he was going through with his album, and how he turned lockdown into a positive and made the most of it. But he worked with his missus, and I'm finding more and more instances, I think possibly, people get together because you meet each other through the music scene, but then you're not necessarily going to work with each other. And a lot of people are like, no, the last person I'd ever want to work with is my partner, because we're partners and I don't want to be in a work type of creative situation. But because of the situation and being away from all of it and having such a weird time, more and more people have made records together, which I'm super jealous of, because I don't have it's not the relationship that I have with my missus. I romantically imagine what it could be like to create, whereas most people have kind of put me in their places like it's not that easy actually, because you both go in, when you've got two creative minds, you can be quite fired up, and then you have to be quite brutal with each other. Yeah,
there's a separation that you have with a third party that you don't quite have with a partner, because there's so much more. There's less filter between thought and speak. So, like, if one of us doesn't like what the other's doing, where you might be a bit more diplomatic in a session with a singer you don't know that well, with her, it's like, no, I don't like that. Or with Mitch, she'll be the same with me, like, a bit more. And obviously there's a lot of fragility that comes with showing each other your ability in a room. There's a lot of like sensitivity around that, about being judged, and about like, showing a sensitive side or expressing yourself, I guess. That a lot of, I guess loads of people have trouble with that. But when you do it in front of your partner, it's like, you're sort of, it's hard, because you obviously trust each other, but you also, there's sort of a delicacy about it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Because you care about each other and you care about each other's feelings as well, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a massively personal piece of work, your most personal body of work that you've ever made in your entire career so far.
Yeah. It's, I wouldn't say necessarily it's like the most personal I've ever made so far. I'd say it's all of it's personal, because I'm quite a sensitive person. So I feel like a lot of it is like a real reflection, of what's going on. But also, it was just like it was the most challenging because it was just me, but also because I bit off a big, probably a bit more than I could chew, in terms of trying to stick to the drum and bass genre, which I was pretty sure from the get go I wanted to do. But explore, and almost like I was like learning on the go to try and. I wanted to basically, I think I said this in the last UCAF interview, that I don't want to be just like good at one style of drum and bass music. I want to be good at all of it. Yeah. And turn my hand and show that I can do all of it. I think that comes to that like problem with self-confidence. It's like I almost want to just be like, no, I can do that. No, I can do that bit as well. So it was like I wanted to just tackle all the styles that I like and bring it all together. So I guess, yeah, it is really personal because it brings together like all the theoretical ideas that I guess lots of people will listen to and go, what the fuck is he on about? And all my influences and my will and sort of ADD like brain of not wanting to sort of cover the same ground over and over again. That's one thing I guess I'm really proud of with it, is that there's not many tunes. There's not many times on the record where you're in the same space. There's lots. No. It's quite different. Like from tune to tune, you might have like glimmers of bits that have gone before or what might come later. But I think each tune can stand on its own. And I really wanted to make sure of that. A lot of music got left on the cutting room floor that I love, but just didn't fit or was too similar to another one or didn't sound like an album tune. Like there's another sort of 20 tunes there that I think they're really good, and they're not on the album on merit, but they're just not on the album because they didn't fit within the story and the aesthetic that I'm trying to present. That's the other thing, Dave, is that I really took it on. Like I've done all the artwork, I've done all the animations myself. So like the only people working on this project are me and Amy, and then my distributor. All the artwork, all the animation. I was sort of, that was the tail end of last year was horrendous with the artwork. I was basically, I was talking to the guy who did the late night soundtrack artwork. This guy, Jason from New York, really sick designer. Loved his design for that. And he's had this website, and I was going through and I was like, fuck, he's got some amazing other work on there. Maybe this would fit with the album. And then the more and more I looked at it, it felt like, again, to move towards the scary thing, it felt like a cop-out. Yeah. It felt like I have to do this.
I haven't seen the artwork, have I? I was just looking at the album folder that you've given me, but it's just the music. There's no album artwork there.
I'll send you it now. Hang on. Are you on the internet now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. And yeah, you can see elements of this then in the singles that have already come out so far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the artworks, it's every single is going to be different in terms of the art, but just like within the same theme, if that makes sense. So that I'm not going to just do that standard thing of changing the colorways. This is the other thing, Dave. If you scroll down at the bottom, you see the center labels spinning around. Can you see those?
Yeah.
I got really, really, really into these phenakistoscopes, which is like a still image when it spins, it reanimates, right?
Yeah.
And I spent fucking months learning how to do them, right?
Wow.
And mainly because, right, it fits within the theme of reanimation. It's still, but when you spin it, just through that act of spinning it, your brain creates motion from the thing.
Like a zoetrope, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's called a zoetrope. Phenakistoscope, zoetrope. The same. Yeah, same.
Right.
Same thing. So those are the center labels on the record.
Right. Okay. Wow. So my brain is creating that. Then you've moved the line in each one. If I stop, can I stop it? I can't stop it. That's just going round.
They're gifts, so they'll spin forever.
Brilliant. Did you come from a design background prior to music, prior to Spectrasoul and stuff? Was that kind of your projected career path if you didn't go on more of a kind of risky, scary one to make music for a living? There's graphic design at college, then like art foundation, then I studied graphic design at university at LCC.
and I graduated in like 2011. So basically what happened was, while I was doing my degree, the Spectral Soul stuff was starting to kick off. It was starting to happen. This was around the time of like Glimpse and, like Alibi, Organize, all those sort of records. And then when I left university, we'd signed our deal with Shogun to do the album, and I left and immediately went into writing Delay No More. So 2011 summer of, and then we finished the album in February 2012, and then it came out that year. And since then, I've been full-time music, and I have done bits and bobs for the Spectral Soul stuff. Like I did the Ish-Chat logo and all that sort of crap, but like not really. And it's only really over this since I started the workforce thing, that I was like, right, well, I'm going to obviously do as much as I can for me, because I can. I did the sleeve for the Care and Consideration EP and all the animations. So the short answer is yes, I did come from a design background, but it was only really with this project that I thought I'm going to bite off all of it, do it myself, because it feels like the right thing to do, with it being a personal project.
Hugely. Another reflection of you, another reflection of your brain and and the process, really, which is at the heart of it all, really, isn't it? And the most important thing. And
essentially, when I do all of it, I can create the world. I can create the reality of what color and imagery is associated with the music, and what sort of graphic motions I want to create that represent the music and stuff like that. So ultimately it's like owning all of that and not relying on someone else to interpret what you've made and then make some artwork that reflects that, when it's never really going to get inside the essence of it, like as if I do it, Yeah. Had to be done.
Awesome. So this comes out now May, and you've let it sit as well. You've let it settle. You're not hurrying anything, which I think creates value, and it emphasizes the timelessness of the music, really, and the importance of the artistry, which has always been at the heart of everything workforce related and everything that I think you've probably ever put your mind to doing creatively anyway. In the meantime, there must be 100. We were talking about doing lots of other projects and stuff like that. There must be loads of other things bubbling away in the background. Or have you purposefully taken yourself out of music and the creative process for a little while to let this settle, and maybe doing animations and stuff like that instead?
Yeah. So since I'm trying to think like the timeline here, I haven't written any music since I finished this album. No. So I'm trying to think what I've been doing. So I moved basically between August and the end of last year. I was hunting for a house and moving house. So a lot of my time was taken up doing that, which was perfect timing, really, because I finished this record and it was in production, and I knew that I could start chipping away at some of the animations and assets to go with it. But because I was moving house and I'd finished this project, it lined up perfect. So I started doing that, and it gave me a nice other focus from this. I'm not itching to get back in the studio, I'll tell you. I'm really not. I'm aware that like doing an album project keeps you tied up for sort of, a year making it, and a year once you've had it out. I'm probably going to do, I don't know what my next project's going to look like or when it's going to come out. And I haven't written any new music. I've got bits that I know are good that didn't make the cut on the record for the reasons I said, like, just didn't really fit, that I can work with. But I think this is what happens when you do an album, is you're so done by the time it comes out. I just can't, I'm in here now, but only because I'm working on animation stuff. So this is just like where I come and do work. In the meantime, I'm basically learning loads of animation stuff.
Still keeping the brain going and still creative, still scratching that itch, really, isn't it? There's two types of post-album mindsets. Some people, after some albums, are just eager to crack on. They still got that momentum. There's still something that they want to say or achieve or do. And other people, when they've done an album, and it all depends on so many different things, are like, no, I need to take a break. I don't want to be in the studio for 6 months or however long it takes, really, until you're ready.
It's a funny one, because like, when I said to people at the beginning, I think I'm going to do an album, lots of people were like, oh, don't do an album. It's 2021 at the time. Like, albums they just don't work. And I saw that as like a challenge, to be like, well, hang on a minute. Like, I love the album format. Like, I rarely listen to playlists. I love album formats because it means, particularly if you like an act, it's like you're really getting inside. Again, another thing I just heard Flying Lotus say, where he's like, I'm listening to a record and I'll always try and identify the one that I don't like the most and try and think, is that the one I'm going to love the most after I've listened through this album 5 or 6 more times? And that just speaks to how, like, there is a magic about an album.
Yeah, man. And it pretty much always is. The tunes that you're not too sure about to begin with are the tunes that you end up taking away for much, much longer, and including in your personal collections or playlists or anything like that. Like, I can think of, like, growing up all of the time, the tunes that I'm never too sure about are the ones you end up falling in love with the most, I think, eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's like, you know, kind of rising to the challenge, almost like saying, like, right, okay, why don't I like that then? What is it about that? I love this band. I love, you know, they resonate with me. So why is this particular song?
I guess it's sort of like it's sort of like standing up and fighting for the format in a world that doesn't like albums much nowadays. Albums nowadays seem like collections of tunes that could all fit in a playlist on their own, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe don't. Yeah, I mean, not universally, because there are still good albums, but it's not seen as like the key format now, because we're seen as like content providers. So it's like as much content as possible as regularly as possible.
I fucking hate that term. I hate that term. Like, I trot it out every now and again. I did a big ranty piece for Mixmag years ago. Like, I'd hear more and more younger musicians like be like, I got loads of content ready. It's like, no. I do the content, mate. I make the fucking content. I make the shit that people read on the toilet. You make music. You make magic. I'm the content. So don't reduce your fucking artistry down to the word content. But so many people do, and it's I might trot that out over the weekend if I've got nothing else to share, because it's still pertinent now. Never ever call music content, and it's down to managers and fucking agents and the business side referring to music as content. And
it depends how you define it, really, doesn't it? Because I think if you think about it in a positive way, it is content, music, but I think the word content nowadays comes with certain connotations that I don't think of with music, you know, like disposability, quick turnaround, lots of it, you know, people want to see 20 seconds, they're on to the next thing. And you can't, and I guess the other thing, I guess, that I was wrestling with this album is like, if you want people to be different and to engage with content for longer, or to fight against the tide, you have to sort of like foster that within your listenership. And if you're not willing to sort of take that, you know, there's plenty of tunes on this record that I could have edited down to like 3 minutes, but there's like one on there's like 7 minutes. Most of them are like 5-6 minutes, you know? And I feel like if you don't appeal to the better nature of like, or maybe appeal to like people that are willing to listen for longer, you're not going to foster that sort of listenership or that sort of like audience, you know? You know, like I can't remember who said it, but someone said it to me at a gig. It was another producer, I can't remember who it was, but they were like, oh yeah, I keep my arrangements short now for Spotify, like 3-4 minutes. I'm like, what? Because it just doesn't, I don't want to be dictated to by the platform and be dictated to how like the masses consume music, because I want to appeal to the people that still care about artistry and care about like, have a long attention span, you know? Like,
yeah, because they are also the people who are going to go out and buy the vinyl version. They're the people who are likely to go and buy a T-shirt. They're the people who are actually going to buy a ticket and come to a gig specifically to see you come up and shake your hand. There's less of them, but they're the people who believe and invest in you. Like,
but not only that, if you don't have people like that in the world, then less of that kind of art gets made, doesn't it? So like, we're all going to be reduced to these 3-4 minute things, you know? I think that also speaks to like the homogenization of drum and bass as well, really. And it's something that I've given a lot of consideration to, is that I think it's become homogenized because, and I'm aware my position and what I am and who I am and stuff, but it's become homogenized because it's over-representation of people who look like me, right? So it's a sort of scarcity of breadth of ideas. So I'm really aware, like, how homogenous I'm thinking, well, why does everything sound quite similar, and why is it all quite disposable, and why is this mainstream sound permeating down this throwaway thing? And it is that it's not just like people's race or their ethnicity or whatever. It's like it's access to people who've got less money, or people who, I don't know, have a voice but not the means to speak. And like as things have progressed, the entry point is tougher, and you know, even just like club ticket prices, or like, I don't know, like the equipment, or you know, the access to the software, pretty simple. But some people, like, they don't have a laptop. I mean, and so I'm really interested in, like, how do we battle against that sort of homogenization somehow, because it's for the benefit of everybody. Like the scene is, like, I hate that word scene, but like the whole thing is going to suffer if we have an over representation of one type of experience or voice, you know?
Yeah, massively. And I think that is something that has been great that has come out of lockdown. And that's, you know, just before chatting to you, is chatting to Nathan X, guy, like the drag DJ from Unorthodox, who's just setting up like an open deck session for queer artists. And Mandy Dextrous is chatting to them a couple of days ago about like offering free classes to non-binary producers and giving them a voice in order to give other people opportunities has become a top priority for me, really, in terms of making sure that diversity is there and utilizing the platform for the best possible way, really, to advertise that and to create those opportunities.
That's the other side of the coin, right? This is where the whole debate comes about representation. Is if you don't see yourself up there, you're not going to feel welcome as part of the quote unquote scene, right?
Yeah.
So how do we change that? One, ultimately, it's about making people feel welcome, isn't it? And while like those unorthodox events might not be the place where I would like to go and party, I'm fucking glad that they exist, because I feel like everyone should feel no one should feel excluded by virtue of who they are and what their identity is and what they're about, you know. And I'm fucking glad they're there, because it means a richness of ideas, a richness of you're bringing a richness to the tapestry of what we call drum and bass or club music, you know, and that permeates the whole thing. So when maybe it won't be so bad to be inward looking at other drum and bass acts if we've got a real richness of like voices and styles. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm quite responsive on like Instagram and stuff, particularly if someone reaches out who is from like an oppressed group. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make an effort to speak to those people, because they're the ones that could really do with my help. They do with some help, you know. What I don't like about this debate is that people look at it and they go, "Oh, look, he's just like doing it for social media likes." Well, actually, for me, it's deeper than that. It's like I've got 3 sisters. My mum's like super engaged with all this stuff. I chat with them. They tell me their experiences about what it's like being a woman in the world, and then you can extrapolate that out to like, you know, people, trans people, non-binary people, and you realize that actually, like, if I was to have a kid in like now and they grow up and I haven't done a little bit of what I could do to make them feel a bit more welcome if they wanted to come into this scene, then that would feel like shit. You know, if I was doing, I'm probably not, I could do more, right? But if I don't try and at least make it feel more welcoming to other people, then I feel like I'm doing a disservice to like my own daughters or my own, non-binary kid I could have, you know? Massively.
Same here. I've got a daughter as well, and she constantly reminds me of this, you know, anything that we're watching, any movie that we're watching, anything that I might show her from that I grew up with, she's straight away, where are the girls? And now she's getting to like 9 or 10 and developing her own taste in music and stuff. That's becoming more and more of a priority thought of mine as well, really.
I think it's a very tough conversation, you know, like, they're difficult conversations that have to be had. And so much of it is about people looking at themselves and being honest with themselves. Like, for me, as like a cis white producer, I think with all of it, so much of it is about ego, because like you want to believe that you're there on merit, right, and only on merit. It's actually quite like, I find it quite alleviating to think, well, actually, like I'm here. I've worked really hard, and I know I've got talent and ability, but I've had a lot of advantages that have meant that I've been able to do better than someone who may have the same talent and ability, but doesn't have the same born advantages, But there's a lot of fragility around that. Like, a lot of people are going to find it hard to admit, like in music or otherwise, that their success is down to pure roll of the dice. You've been born with some natural advantages, So there's been some difficult conversations around that. I've found myself in tricky conversations about it, and I felt that's what probably last year what made me feel a bit paranoid, is because I feel like it's all very tribal, and if I try and have a conversation about something, so well, actually, that means what you're saying there is a bit fucked up because of X, Y, Z. It can be alien. It's not what I don't mean this as like a woe is me, but like it can be alienating for you, because you feel like you're standing up for something that you believe in that's alienating you from your pack, sort of thing. So, I've made it pretty fucking clear on social media about my feelings about sort of Joe Rogan and John Peterson and stuff, but I feel like there's a sort of gravitation towards those people because we're having a crisis of male ego in the modern world, and so people are looking for like ways of understanding the world as someone that presents it to them in a way that fits with what they already think, sort of thing.
You just watched a couple of pony YouTube videos there, which have cobbled together a load of conspiracies and usually for another agenda and stuff. Definitely, man. Cool. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. You died. You died. You died. You died. You died.